Imagine having the support of a community behind you as you explore eating vegan plant-based. Hi, this is Mark Dillon. I'm the host of the Mindful Vegan Podcast, and I want to let you know about a brand new group that I've recently started. It's a mastermind, so to speak, but a mastermind of people who want to make vegan plant-based their way of eating. I know that at times there can be struggles and obstacles in the way, but we're going to talk about that. And every single week, I'll be offering a live video where we can get together and I'll be sharing that information with you. Now, in addition to that, you'll be connected with others who are also exploring eating vegan plant-based, so you'll be able to exchange and gather ideas from them. And in addition, I'm going to bring you live interviews with guests. Yes, just like you here on the Mindful Vegan Podcast, and you will be able to ask them questions directly. For more details, I invite you to go to the store at mindfulvegan.com. Welcome to the Mindful Vegan Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Dillon. This show is all about how do you bring vegan food into your life, and most importantly, how is it that you make vegan plant-based food a part of your life every single day? Well, I explore those questions with others, and I talk to them about their journey, about their path, some of the obstacles that they've run into, some of the successes that they've run into, and they share that story with you so that you can make it a part of your life. Well, today I'm interviewing Kenden Alfond. She is a blogger at jewishfoodhero.com, and she also has written the book, The Jewish Food Hero Cookbook. Her book shows how you can take traditional Jewish food and make it vegan plant-based. And today we're going to hear her story, and she's going to share with us some of the successes and some of the struggles, and of course how she overcame those struggles along her journey to making vegan plant-based a part of her life. Of course, you can always go to the mindfulvegan.com website, and right there I have some easy-to-click links so that you can connect with Kenden and find out more information about her. But let's start off the conversation, as I often do, asking about her original journey, how she first became interested in eating vegan plant-based. Let's hear what she has to say.
I found a simple book about Gandhi when I was around 12, and his approach to nonviolence and about nonviolence and eating really captured my attention. And so at that point, I became vegetarian. And then after that, I stayed on the path of vegetarianism and veganism because I started reading more about people doing that at that time in the 80s. And I really felt that I wanted what I perceived those people to have. And I remember reading books like by the Diamonds, I read a book by Helen and Scott Nearing, and I'm not sure if they were even vegetarian, but I was really attracted to their whole ethos and the way they looked, the way they spoke, and it appealed to me.
What was it, that quality that you thought they had, that you perceived that others had, that you were hoping to gain yourself?
I think that it was, first of all, it was a projection. I don't know what was happening for them, but I think that I was really attracted to what I saw as sort of inner peace. And, when you meet somebody and they seem like comfortable in their body and embodied.
Yeah.
I felt like I was seeing that and I wanted that. No, especially as I got older, going through puberty and adolescence. I think it's confusing time physically. And that dream of being comfortable in my own body and being embodied and being able to move with grace and stuff was really something that I wanted.
And now kind of, hindsight is always 20/20. As you look back, do you feel like you've come close to that, or that you attained what it was that you initially were inspired by?
That's a good question. I don't know if I've attained it, but I feel like I'm still motivated by that dream. And I think that eating this way helps me stay close to it.
That's interesting. So in a sense, it's like that ideal kind of carries you through. And I would imagine at times, maybe you do touch it, but it's not like an attainable kind of quality in a sense.
Right, and it's something that I think at least I don't know about other people, but it's something that I need to constantly stay in touch with. Like maybe I move further away and then I realize and I need to get closer to it by changing something in my behavior, but it is something that it does stay close to me.
When you say that it kind of falls away, what do you think it is that sometimes gets in our way of living that we truly aspire to do? Are there certain things that you could look at and say, yeah, when I get overwhelmed, when I'm very busy, or are there certain times that disconnect happens for you that you could look at and share about?
So I really think, I mean, based on my work and my experience, I really think people are very different. So for me, it's about, keeping a pretty balanced and simple routine with food and movement. And if I start to move away from that, I start to feel more disconnected. But that's about, as I've gotten older, it's about knowing myself. I don't think that's a recipe for everybody.
The word simple and often minimalist kind of ideas and things like that, I think often people do connect in with and fits well with eating plant-based, with eating vegan food. And is that something that you've noticed as well within yourself and others that you work with? Is that kind of a common trait?
I think so. I have a mentor who said something to me about he started eating plant-based after me. He's in his 70s, but he said something about how he told his friend about it. He's like, how X was an alcoholic and then they stopped drinking and they just said, I just don't think about alcohol anymore and I feel peaceful. And I think that somehow when you start eating this way, there's so many other things you don't have to worry about. Not that food's an addiction necessarily, but I think it does make life a lot simpler emotionally, physically, mentally. It's just a more peaceful existence.
And you use the word mentor that you have. And is this somebody that you've had in your life that's a mentor for eating plant-based, or they're also a mentor in other ways?
The eating plant-based came later. He's a mentor to me in other ways, but we share now the plant-based experience. But it was something that when I was younger, he said something like he was a student of Trungpa Rinpoche in the 70s. And so when I was, I remember being younger and talking to him about vegetarianism. And I guess Trungpa said something like when he met all these, hippies in the 70s, like that they were just eating concepts instead of like that they were attracted to vegetarianism or veganism just because of it's a concept, an idea. And he encouraged people to sort of get away from that. And I remember thinking about that at that time and wondering about it. And I haven't figured it out yet, but I think it's about not being extreme in your mindset, no matter how you eat or what you do.
Do you think he was pointing towards when he was saying to get away from that concept? Was it not doing it because it's a thing to do, but making it a part of who you are?
Yeah, I think it was about getting into the physical experience about it, not about the mental, the fighting about it, the promoting it, the things that might lead to a more agitated mindset.
Wow. Okay. So you're really speaking about something that I've been noticing very strongly recently with people who are, there's almost a passion that arises for many people as they start to explore eating plant-based, as they start to eat vegan. And I see that does create a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety. And it's almost like that passion in one sense fuels people to continue on this path, but also I'm seeing that in a sense it's burning people out because we can't live at that kind of intensity. Have you noticed that with others as well?
I have noticed that, and I think the part that I notice is how much suffering it causes in relationships between the person that experiences that kind of passion and their loved ones or the people around them. And I interviewed Jeff Novick this year. I had the great honor to do that. And he was talking about, for him, he tries to focus on this idea of attraction versus promotion. And that really resonates with me. Like you don't actually have to say anything because if you're eating the right way and it's affecting you in all the ways it should be, people will just be attracted to that You don't need to do any promoting. And it's really just about accepting people, where they are. You don't have to judge people about how they eat. That's their business. It's none of your business.
Yeah, that attracting versus pulling somebody. I recently was listening to somebody speak, and they were talking, it wasn't about vegan eating, it was just in general, talking about being a lighthouse versus being a tugboat. If you are the lighthouse and you're just holding it, others that are interested will be attracted and will come. But to force somebody to do something, that's a challenge, and often met with complete frustration.
That's right. And it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody.
Well, speaking about others and relationships and people that we care about, loved ones, your husband and your daughter both are interested, at least, and do eat a lot of plant-based. So could you speak about that relationship and what it's like as somebody who is eating plant-based? So this is how you live your life, having others in your life that look at you as that lighthouse and go towards it.
So I don't know if that's always been true, but so in our family, I eat exclusively this way, and my husband and daughter do not, but they eat mostly like this. My husband has a very good relationship with food, and he's really healthy and all this stuff, and he also is not attracted to be one way or the other, so he doesn't want to become entirely vegan. So that's something that we've negotiated. And about my daughter, I think one of the things that I think about all the time is how tight is this framework? How loose do I need to be? How is she responding to it? Because I don't think kids like extremes. And at the same time, I'm always telling her, when you get older, you're going to decide for yourself. This is the reasons that we do this, but it's up to you.
Years ago, what I used to see is, and this is going back to maybe the 90s and early 2000s, a lot of people were like, I'm vegan because of the animals, and that's it. And it wasn't so much about the food, but of course the food was a part of it because they weren't eating animal-based ingredients. But now I'm starting to see a lot of people who are coming at it with it's plant-based. This is something that is going to change physically my health and make a difference in my life. And I'm just curious what you're seeing with that.
I agree. There isn't this sort of the political energy around it is not as loud as the personal yearning for a different experience in their body. I agree with you. I think that speaks to our times, because I think people are, the time we're living in the West is like people are usually on the over-nutrition side. And so they're looking for relief physically.
Yeah, that nutrition side is something that I've seen as also looking at how people hold eating plant-based and coming in and eating vegan food, that I often will ask people as they're asking a lot about nutrition, I'll say, well, just prior to eating this way, how much did you worry about nutrition? And a lot of people will say, I never even gave it any thought. And now all of a sudden people are feeling this need because they're making a change to almost, in a sense, become an expert, like a full nutritionist. And I'm wondering how much that complicates their journey. And at some point, I just want to say, is it even worth worrying about yet? It's most important that you just simply take the steps. And I'm wondering what you've been noticing as people that you work with. What are their concerns when it comes to nutrition? Or are they just saying, hey, I just want to eat this great food?
I think the worrying thing about nutrition comes from the food marketing culture, that people have an idea in their mind that it's very difficult to meet your nutritional requirements, that you have to do something really special. And in fact, the plant-based diet is exactly the opposite of that. You don't need to do anything particularly special. You just need to eat real, simple, honest to God food. So, but I do think, and I think that if a person becomes plant-based, they get a lot of social pressure about, the constant questioning about where you're getting your protein, where you're getting your calcium. So I think that people feel very vulnerable at that time. What do you think?
Well, I think that you're right. I think that people, as they enter this, they get those questions right away. And it's one of the reasons that, one of the first interviews I did with Dr. Thomas Campbell, one of the co-authors of the China study, I said, okay, let's talk right about protein and let's talk about B12, because those are the things that people often hit people with.
Yeah.
And of course, as you say, eat plant-based food, and my goodness, you are going to get so many of these great, protein sources. It's unbelievable.
After I had my daughter, I took his class at Cornell, the plant-based nutrition class, and I took that class in part because people were really starting to put a lot of pressure on me about raising my daughter this way or etc. And I wanted to feel 100% sure and like I had all the information I needed. And that class really helped me because I have to say before I took it, there was a part of me that felt a little bit extreme. And taking that class allowed me just to drop it, to drop that energy I had vis-a-vis myself. And that has been a huge gift besides all the intellectual information that I got.
Yeah, that's interesting that as we have somebody else, in a sense, that we are now responsible for them, we really do start to question our own beliefs in a sense.
Yeah. And I think that people who eat this way, plant-based or vegan, I think that idea that what you're doing is extreme causes a lot of suffering to you and to everybody around you. To hold this thing like I'm extreme, this. I've been thinking about that a lot since I took that class and how much more peaceful I feel now.
Why do you think we feel that we're making that kind of extreme change in life when we do something like that?
I think it's because it's just about the society we live in. It's just a response to that. I think any person does something on the margins of what their social milieu is, they have to really deal with that energy.
And do you think that the understanding that you gained from that education, that understanding and researching the facts was enough, or was there something else that also helped you to feel like, yeah, no, this is okay, this is the right thing to be doing?
How I felt in my body and how well I saw my daughter and my husband do also. The two things, like the intellectual information and then the physical experience. Like you cannot, when your body is working, you can't really fight with that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the work that you do, because you write and you teach a lot about veganizing traditional Jewish dishes, and I'd like for you to share a little bit about that.
So after I took this course, the Campbell course, I started thinking about my own life and growing up Jewish and now having a Jewish family of my own. And I started thinking about how I wanted to be able to observe Jewish holidays and serve food that was really healthy to my daughter. And then when I was looking online, I was like, oh boy. So I started Jewish Food Hero, which offers plant-based recipes for the Jewish holidays. And it's really about trying to respect and honor the traditions of Jewish food and at the same time modernizing them with everything we know about plant-based and to marry those two ideas.
Do you find as people want to veganize and to make it as a whole food item or a recipe that traditionally may have had, other animal ingredients in it, is it that they're trying to understand what, let's just take something as, butter or, traditionally replacing butter, using a vegan option or something like that? Are they just looking for the simple answer, or is it that they're also struggling with, I'm changing this traditional food that I grew up with, that my family and that, my whole society has been traditionally making for years? Is that more of the struggle, or is it just finding, how do I find an egg replacer?
No, the latter. It's about a cultural attachment to food that we've been historically eating.
And so what is it that you're sharing with people that helps them to make that connect, that this is an okay thing to do? Because that's strong. That's a really powerful thing that is, held deep within us. So
good to know is that I don't think most of the people that benefit from Jewish Food Hero will replace all of the Jewish food that they serve with plant-based food. I don't think that's something that most people want to do. And it's not my goal, but what I'm trying to do is to provide them with options that they will place on their table, like that we'll be able to, as a culture, put more healthy food on the Jewish table for holidays, in addition to the things that they want to put, that they feel is very necessary.
It's an interesting approach because I think a lot of people do walk in with it's an all or nothing approach. And, of course, they're going to get very different results for that.
Yeah, I don't think this all or nothing thing works for most people. I mean, it works for me, but for most, I think that's a really hard sell.
So let's talk about that, because I think that that's something that those who are listening right now, who they are 100% plant-based, they are 100% vegan, this is their life, this is their passion, to allow that, okay, you're not this way, and I can still accept this. Can you talk how you hold that and how you are able to hold that?
Because what is this really about? I mean, is it really about being extreme, being like this, saying like this is the only way, or is it about being open to other people where they are and to the reality that, number one, this is not everybody's path through life, their priority. I have to accept that. I do accept it. And number two, I think, I've lived all over the world, and I think that I see people with a lot of health that don't eat this way. And I see what they do. And so I think that it is possible to maintain a pretty high level of health, even if you're not entirely plant-based or vegan. It's not for me, but...
Well, I think that tough for me kind of sense, I always go back to when going back again to Dr. Thomas Campbell, he spoke about the social norm. And so for those that are starting to eat plant-based, for those that are starting to eat vegan, they are breaking from the traditional social norm. And, okay, so that's something that we can work with. But then often what I see, and I have seen in myself over the years, is I now try to create the social norm of eating vegan, of eating plant-based in my own life. And so now, much like those who are eating meat, trying to convince me to eat, their way, I'm now trying to convince others to come to my way to create this whole new social norm. And it really is just met with as much frustration for me as they're feeling for me to go back to eat meat. And so really my practice has been over the last number of years to just let go and just to accept that others can walk the path that's best for them, and most importantly for me to focus on my path.
And I think also, I just think that, the United States is a really extreme food environment, so I think that's really why it's hard to accept that this sort of not all or nothing reality. And listen, I try to, I have people to our house every Friday night. We have a Shabbat dinners, and I invite everybody and anybody, and I always serve plant-based food. I'm so happy to share that food, and people really love it. And it is part of the way I am in the world to constantly be sharing this kind of food, but I'm not attached to people changing or going anywhere else. I have faith that they're going to benefit from just that.
Yeah, there's a lot more ease in that kind of approach than, okay, now that they're here, I've got them. I must convince them and change everything about what they're doing.
Yeah. And I think paradoxically, the people that I'm close to that, constantly eat at our house, I see that this idea of like attraction and stuff, it actually does produce change, and it's a really nice change. It's a really soft and subtle, like slow changes in the way that they eat, the way that they think about food. But it's not coming from pushing. It's coming from just that they might feel different or they start to get interested.
Well, let's talk a little bit about food. Do you have a specific recipe that you could share?
So from Jewish Food Hero, one recipe that people really loved was a mock chopped liver recipe. And the reason that they love it is something we referenced before, but chopped liver is something that most, I think in the United States at least, Jewish people grew up eating at the holidays. My grandmother loved it. And this recipe is remade as plant-based with mushrooms and walnuts and balsamic vinegar. And it really does look like chopped liver, and it tastes really light and delicious. So people like that a lot.
Can you talk about maybe one of your favorite cookbooks that you've enjoyed that has helped you to bring great plant-based vegan food into your life?
It's not a cookbook, but the recipes are something I just return to again and again. So I read The Starch Solution, like so many other people. And in the back of that book, they have recipes. And I mean, I brought the book with me to the United States because I'm doing a lot of cooking here. The recipes are really simple, but people like them and they're easy to cook. And I really like, I had somebody on Facebook ask me, where should I start? I said, just buy that book and read it and make some of the recipes and don't go crazy.
Is that really kind of a standard approach when somebody asks you, is just give them a simple response back and not overwhelm them with, okay, now that you're interested, let me give you everything that you need?
Yeah, that for me it is. I think I really like this approach of like deepening your learning and then forwarding your action, but you need to have both at the same time. Like learn something, get educated about it, and then take some action.
And then take some action. That's nice. And bring it into your life more organically.
Mm-hmm.
As you have been traveling around and, going from one country to another, can you talk about how, as somebody who does eat plant-based, and that is what you do, what's it like to travel around the country? Are you finding that there's a challenge as you go, or are you finding that there's that there's great vegan food and plant-based food at each location that you're going to?
So I feel differently now about traveling and eating this way than I used to. I used to feel anxious and afraid that I was going to burden people, or that I was controlling, or that people would think I was controlling. And so it made it, I think, emotionally awkward for me. But now I feel like what I'm working on, and I think I'm doing okay at, is like transforming any anxiety I feel about it into excitement about food. So that means for me that I just try to talk openly about it with people. When I went to Japan for Passover this year, I made like laminated business cards that said in Japanese, like, I'm vegan, no meat, no dairy, so that when I went to a restaurant, I could show the person serving us and they could indicate what we could eat. I try to go to local markets, and just food is a central part of our experience when we travel, not just eating, but looking at food, talking to people about food. So I think that has changed my experience. And to answer your question, I think that it's very easy to travel as a vegan and as a vegetarian. I think it's easier every day.
I like how you use the word transform, because you did transform from that anxiety in the beginning to this sense of ease of how you are now and how you make it work in your life. Can you go into how you actually made that transition happen?
I think that it's like what we talked about before, like taking that class really helped me like deepen my learning and gave me a lot of confidence. And then also what I know is that, I've lived in 5 countries over the last decade, and people love food. Food is a connector. So it's like in India, for example, I was volunteering and I lived in an ashram where they used to cook vegetarian meals for like 40 or 50 women a day. And I used to go hang out in the kitchen and talk, and, people want to talk about the food of their culture. People want to share. So it's kind of, I think, tapping into that energy and saying yes instead of being like, no, 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 has allowed me to sort of embrace this idea of like being excited about things rather than being anxious about it.
And I think that it would be helpful maybe just to state the obvious. This wasn't something that you just decided and that's it. This has been a journey in a sense, right? Over your time from traveling, that you didn't just all of a sudden say, that's it, and now everything is perfectly fine. So allowing this growth to happen, and what that was like for you to maybe when you first started off and you were traveling to different countries, there was a lot of stress, there was a lot of anxiety, but that this is a process that we go through, and that we can't just take a pill and get it. We can't just read a book and get it.
No.
And so that journey and acceptance along the way, can you speak towards what that is like for you to be awkward at times, to be uncomfortable at times with it, and to just realize this is a continuous path that I'm on?
That's a good question. I think it's about kindness, because I think if there's anything that makes me sad about it is that sometimes you actually have to say no to people. You have to say no, thank you. And I think that people have a need to want to share food with you. And so I think it's about finding a way for me, it's about finding a way to say yes to experiences and say yes to the things that people want to give me. And and at the same time staying with my food preferences at the same time.
Yeah, I think I've often seen in my experience, and this isn't from traveling, but just in general with people in my life, that when others find out that I eat plant-based and I go over their home, for example, and they're finding out maybe at the last minute, they often feel a lot of stress. And it's like, no, it's okay. I'm here more to enjoy your company. I can sit and have a glass of tea or something like that, and that's perfectly acceptable to me.
Yeah.
But there's almost like a responsibility or just an honoring of, okay, they're very uncomfortable. Let me try and put them at ease first because I'm already at ease in a sense with it.
That's right. That's right.
Do you use any online resources or any apps that you find helpful to gather more information, especially as you're traveling around?
So when I travel, I go to Happy Cow a lot and just to identify restaurants and even sometimes TripAdvisor, but that's basically it. Mostly though, I've lived in Asia for the past, in different parts of Asia. And I have to say it's really easy in Asia because the diet is really centered around, and I lived in Africa too, but the diet is really centered around starches like rice and noodles. And so it's very simple to go to restaurants and just say, don't give me this, but just give me this,
As you're traveling around and, you've experienced a lot of different countries and a lot of different cultures, do you have a favorite vegan restaurant or even just a favorite restaurant where you get great vegan food in the world?
So in Asia, there are 3 restaurants that I really love. And I'll tell you each one of them. In Ho Chi Minh City, there's a restaurant called Hum Vegetarian Restaurant and Cafe. And their tagline is "Peace comes from within." And it's a really beautiful restaurant in the center of the city. And it's, first of all, like the design is really beautiful and the food is presented nicely and it tastes delicious. So I would definitely go there. The other 2 are in Bali. Everybody knows this place, but there's a woman called Viet Solomon, and she runs these cafes called Down to Earth. She has 8, I think, on Bali. And her values are really about like health conscious living and nonviolence and love. And eating in these cafes is just wonderful. It's just, there's so much variety. It's completely vegan and it just feels good. And then the third one is in Kyoto, Japan, over Passover, we ate at a Zen vegetarian lunch at a temple, which was delightful. The whole Zen ethos and the food. I just loved it.
If the listeners would like to stay in touch with what you're doing and the work that you continue to promote, could you share the best ways that they could do that?
So the best way to learn more about what I do is to go online and check out Jewish Food Hero and even to try out that mock chopped liver recipe. And then if people feel inspired, you can write to me through that website.
Great. Well, thank you very much for sharing everything with us today. I really appreciate your time and the information.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate that you take these interviews into an introspective direction.
As I mentioned at the very beginning of the episode, I invite you to go to mindfulvegan.com, and there you can connect with all of the links that Kenden just shared with you in today's interview. By the way, as you reflect back on the interview, were there moments where you were shaking your head kind of going, yeah, I understand that, or, that's interesting? You see, usually when we listen to something, we connect with it on one of 2 ways. One, it either confirms or supports something that we already know. But then, in those incredible moments where it's that aha or that, what is that? That's a moment to pay attention to mindfully, because there's something to learn there. It's nice to connect with information that we already know about, but to really learn more, to explore further, isn't that what we're trying to do here? I mean, you don't want to just gather and listen to something really quickly and have it pass over. Wouldn't it be great to learn a few new things? So as you get those little hits, those little moments where you get that connection, pay attention to them. There's something there, and sometimes that something can be gold. It can actually change your life. It can transform a moment for you from just ordinary to extraordinary. As you gather those extraordinary moments together, before you know it, you're eating vegan plant-based every single day, and you're doing so without any effort, as simple as breathing. As I look back over the decades of eating vegan, I never realized when I first started this how long it would go for, right? I just knew, okay, this is what I'm doing. But at some point, something shifted, and it's just as simple as breathing. It's no longer, how do I eat vegan? It's just what I do. Nothing else is an option. So as you listen to these shows, walk in with that attitude. Sit down expecting that this is what's going to take you to that next step where you just simply eat vegan for life. Okay, I look forward to getting together with you again next week. And as always, you are welcome to reach out to me at mindfulvegan.com. Until next week, go enjoy some great vegan food. Take care now.